my name is Hemi. I'm one of the chiropractors at the Enfield Chiropractic Clinic. This is Erol. He's also one of the chiropractors at the Enfield Chiropractic Clinic, and we thought we'd come here today and talk about the brain, because everybody knows that chiropractors treat back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain and so on, but not many people know what's the influence that we can have as chiropractors on your brain. So we thought we'd start with that today. So our topic today is the development of the brain and how we can influence it. Because we know that there are several things that happen in our early life that will affect our brain development. So I'm going to pass it to Erol.
Yes. Hello again. So these are the little topics we'll cover today. Obviously, one of the main things of today, and as the title suggests as well, the first 7 years, how does the brain grow, and then what influences the growth as well of the brain, and again, how do we know if the brain is affected, what kind of tests we do, and what can we do to catch up, what affects the aging brain, and what can we do as adults to help our brains as well. So not just the first 7 years, but later as well, if we're a bit too late to do stuff about it. But yeah, so these are the main bits we'll cover today. But here I wanted to ask you guys a question. Obviously I know you've been waiting for us to start, and you're possibly a little bit too bored of waiting. So let's get interactive with it. What do you guys think affects our brain or influences our brain?
Food we eat. Sorry?
The food we eat.
Yes, the food we eat, yeah.
Food our mothers eat
Yes.
during pregnancy.
Yes, absolutely.
Speech and noise we hear.
That's a very good one. Yeah,
How we move our bodies.
exactly.
Yes.
That's really
Yeah.
good.
So you guys are definitely
Have you had the birth itself?
I was going to say.
Yeah. So there are obviously so many things. Anything that we interact with, or anything we hear, we see, everything affects our brain and learning as well. So we'll move on to the next one. In fact, the great Greek philosopher Aristotle once said, "Give me a child until he is 7, and I will show you the man." And in the first 7 years of life, that's what we're going to start with today. Harvard University shows the brain develops rapidly during the first years of life. Before children turn 3 years old, they're already forming 1 million neural connections every minute. And yeah, obviously this becomes brain mapping system formed by a combination of nature and nurture, especially certain return interactions.
Okay, so since we know that the brain develops the most in the first 7 years, does anybody know what year of life it develops the most out of the 7?
And how much of it
And how much of it,
develops?
Is it the first year?
It is the first year. And can anybody guess?
90%.
That was good. That was very good. We might have seen that somewhere before. Yes. So 90% of the brain growth happens in your first year of life. So over the next 6 years, only 5% more is going to grow. So the first year of life is the most critical year for brain development.
Hemi, sorry, can I just ask again? What about the fetus and the growth of the brain?
Yeah. So
how much of it is?
So you will have some growth there, but there is the big influence with the first year is all the stuff we do to the baby. So like the movement, the food, the sleeping, the nurturing. So that actually grows much more, especially the cortical center. So when you're born, you will have the primitive brain. So you'll have your breathing, your digestion, your heart, right? So all the basic sort of structure of the brain is there. But when we're now looking at the higher centers of the brain, most of that is developing in that first year. And there is one more part which we'll talk about later, actually. I don't know if I mentioned it in this one. So early years are critical window of opportunity. We know that because this will shape the child's ability to learn. They will think and thrive. Their early experiences, positive or negative, will lay the foundation for their future. first 7 years of life, your brain operates at a different brain wave than we do right now. So it's called the theta wave, and this is the wave that the hypnotists use to put someone into a trance or whatever they call it. And this is basically where your brain will just absorb any suggestions, any comments, anything you get told. Like, for example, if your mum says, you'll never make anything of yourself, things like that, it will absorb. You've got 7 years, right? Don't forget, children will understand what you're saying. So sometimes when we talk about people talking and then children understanding, sometimes it goes completely to their subconscious. They may not even be aware that they've taken this in. And this will pretty much rinse and repeat for the rest of their life, whatever they've been told. And this is something that, unless you recognize your patterns and you work on them, and that's the good thing about the brain. Brain is plastic, so we can change it. So we do think that, yes, you may have your programs all set, ready to play for the rest of your life by the age of 7, but you can actually change them. But you need to recognize them. And that's where the hard part, yeah, exactly. You need help from outside, whether it's a therapist or your past life regression hypnotherapist or whoever it is that helps you to recognize them. So what affects the developing brain? So we all said there's lots of different ways. So of course the birth will affect it, what your mother ate, what's happening to you as you develop. But there's one of the biggest things that affects your developing brain is your tone of your muscles surrounding the spine. This is basically, it will affect you throughout your life, but particularly in that first year of life. When babies are born with low tone in their body, they don't have that strength in the muscles of the neck to be able to hold their head up. And we know that one of the biggest things that will help you develop your curve in your neck is the shape, is your muscles of your neck. And you'll see later why neck is so important than anything else. The shape of the skull and movement of the neck, like I say, will affect the brain, because the shape of the skull is affected by the birth process. It could be how the baby was laying inside the uterus. That can affect the skull shape as well. And of course, we won't go into it too much, but you know how babies are put to sleep in the daytime and nighttime. You know, most babies are now put to sleep on their back. Well, the actual skull, we have a skull to show you. This is the infant skull. So you can see, infant skull is like a jigsaw puzzle. It's not fused, and actually as it happens, we are not fused either, but that's another story. We'll go into that differently. But you can see these little lines here. These are called your sutures, okay? And these sutures, there is a movement in them. There's like what we call a cranial rhythm in them. And you've got the soft spots here, right? So this allows for the expansion of the brain through that first year. And particularly quite a lot in the first 18 months to 2 years. And these soft spots will start to kind of come together as the brain is starting to get to its adult size. And I'll pass it around if you want to have a look. So this sort of skull is black and orange or a very soft sprue. So if you put pressure on any part of the skull will deform. So if you have a baby that's always sleeping on their back, they tend to end up getting flat heads. And up till recently, I think there's more research done now, but we used to think flat head is just a cosmetic thing. Now we know it affects the brain, it affects the spine, it affects the tone of the spine. So we know that it affects a lot more than what we think it affected. So we do want to make sure the shape of the skull is nice and round, and you've got full movement of the neck. That baby should be able to lift their head, if you put them on their tummy, and turn their head side to side by the age of 2 to 3 months. And that is when you know that the tone is developing as it should do, and the neck curve, the cervical curve we call it, that is also developing as it should. So the development of cervical lordosis, or neck curve if you like, we've got about 8 years to get this right. So it's a long time, but most of it is set the stage in that first sort of 0 to 3 years.
Sorry. By flat head.
Flat head. So if you like, So as we were saying, the head should be like, if you like, round, right? So there's
That's the
different
actual
parts of the
skull,
head.
Yeah, not the brain.
Yeah, the head, the bones, if you like. What happens is, if you put the baby on a, like, it's like a soft thing that would
It's very
deform.
malleable.
Yeah.
Right? The baby's skull will be very malleable, and if there's pressure on it all the time, it doesn't curve that way,
Yeah.
right?
You can see nice skull curve here.
It's flat.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that goes
That's right.
flat because the bone will be very malleable, and you put pressure in it.
And it's that effect on the brain if you get a flat head.
It will affect your tone and it will affect your cervical curve. You'll see later how that affects the brain. Yeah, we're getting to it, how it's going to affect the brain. We also know, obviously, nutrients, like we said, diet, sleep, feeling of safety and security. We also know that babies can feel wanted and welcomed. And if they have a parent that's maybe, let's say, is not welcoming them, they can feel that, and they will know that, and that will affect how their brain is going to develop, how they're going to develop their security and their feeling of comfort. So why is the cervical or the neck so important? This is because when you look at the embryology of how we are developing, the actual neural tube, which is where you've got the brain and the spinal cord coming down, it fuses first at the fourth cervical soleus, which basically is the middle of your neck. Okay? Now, what we also find now is that this area, the middle of your neck, has the most joint receptors compared to anywhere else in your body, which is why it's so important. And these joint receptors are what give the information to your brain. Now, movement to a brain is like food to our body. We need to move. And the first thing the baby learns to move is their neck. That's what they're going to move, and they're going to move that area, and that's going to feed into that brain and start to give that information into the brain. The first joint in your spine, which is where your skull sits on your head, which we have here, this bit. So this is the part of your skull at the bottom. It will sit on this first bone here. That joint, it develops between 0 and 3 years. So if you think about that baby on its back now, guess what happens to this joint? It doesn't develop properly. If this doesn't develop properly, the curve doesn't develop properly. If that doesn't develop properly, then the rest of the spinal curves don't develop properly. So this is a really important time to make sure that the skull and the head are developing as they should be. And like we said, we have a little window of opportunity. So if we notice a baby with flat head, we don't ignore it. We say, let's do something. And usually the earlier the better. Like when I see babies, I've seen a baby that was 3 days old. So the earlier the better, we can work with the babies. So we know that if you don't get this right, you can, of course, these are not life-threatening issues. You can live your life, but you will have to manage that area for the rest of your life because the window is gone. The 0 to 3 is when the window is. The muscles at the back of your neck, we call these suboccipital muscles. These also have the densest muscle receptors compared to anywhere else in your body. Because this is a very important area. This is where your brainstem will come in to the upper spine. So these are quite important areas, right? So the way we're made is amazing. Like the human body is amazing. How our creator or our body knows that that's where the receptor concentration needs to be, because that's where the brain needs the most information. How is that head held on the spine? And we know that that will affect how that baby lifts that head. We know that this will also affect the tone of the neck and the tone of the spine. We know that tone will affect, it's got a reciprocal relationship with the brain. So the right side of your brain, particularly this front part here, we call it the frontal cortex, that affects the axial tone or the tone of your spine, right? So how your body, how your posture is. So we know that if this is not developing properly, your tone won't be great. If your tone is not great, this won't develop properly. So it's like a chicken or the egg, but it actually works together.
Yeah. So again, coming back to flat head, why is sleeping back on back it's better for babies. As we just discussed, obviously when you sleep on your back, you will be putting your head weight onto the fairly malleable, weak bones there, and obviously that will start causing the flat head. Also C0, C1, which is the very base of your skull there, the first levels will be deformed. We talked about already this area. I think the only thing I would add is also we need stability in the area. If your skull is sitting on an unstable foundation, let's say, our eyes always have to be parallel to the ground. If this is not stable enough and the muscles are too tense around it, try to stabilize it, we're not only going to have problems with just pain, but also it can affect your ears, your balance, everything. You need stability in the base of your skull. Also low tone in neck. I know we talk about tone a lot, but tone is basically muscles. We can call it strength in a way. So that can then result in delay in motor milestones, which we're going to talk in a second, and cognitive decline. Development of the cervical curve will be affected. Again, we talked a little bit about the relation of the curve and the prefrontal cortex, and brain development will be affected. So I guess that's why we need the tummy time for, right?
Yeah. So this is the thing I was going to talk about a little bit more, because obviously it was back in the 80s they did this back to sleep campaign, and they recommended babies to sleep on their back to avoid the dangers of sleeping on the tummy and the death and sort of like that babies passing away when they sleep. There is some more research now, and some of the new research is saying that did they die because they had low tone, or did they die because they couldn't move their neck? So what the new advice is, if the baby is able to lift their head and turn side to side, and usually this is around about 2 to 3 months they should be able to do this, then it should be safe to put them on their tummy. But of course, the current guidelines still say sleeping on their back is good, but as we can see, there's a lot of evidence that says sleeping on the back is not really the good for the baby. And we are now seeing, we were just talking about earlier, neurodiverse kids. The kids that are having learning issues and so on is going up and up. Why is it going up? Are we doing something wrong to the babies at the beginning? Who knows, right? It's just something to think about.
Baby's not, so I know I go to sleep all over the place, but the baby's not too old like adults.
So the first 3 months are quite critical. So we're talking about developing that strength in their muscles of their neck.
Yeah.
If you're putting babies on their back in the beginning, like the first few weeks of birth, they won't develop this. If they don't develop that, they're not going to be able to lift their head. If they can't lift their head, they're not turning their head. It will happen eventually. So brain is very clever. It will compensate for certain deficiencies, shall we say, but you will never quite get the optimal neurological development that you should have had. So it's not like you can't. Everything is fine, but we're looking at optimal, or we're looking at it's okay. Let's get on with it, So.
Can I just ask, the baby car seats that people carry around
Yes.
everywhere?
Yeah.
Because some babies live for a long time.
Yes.
Does that also contribute to
Correct,
flat
exactly.
head?
Same thing.
Yes,
No
yeah.
different to sleeping on their back. The baby's head
Yeah.
will be in. And not only that, remember we said movement to the and movement to the brain is like food to our body. So if a baby is strapped down, there is no movement of the body happening. Less development of the brain.
From the car and then they just
Yeah.
sit in it for ages.
I tell all my patients, don't bring your car seats in, leave them in the car, carry that baby in, and you carry the baby. Car seats are meant to be in the car, not taken out anywhere. It's for safety reasons, right? It's not going to help the baby's brain in any way. So this is our advice. So when can a baby sleep on the tummy? tummy. So of course we do know the guidance is not to put baby on their tummy at night time. So what I say to my patients is, you know, when the baby is in the waking hours and you're next to the baby, put the baby on their tummy, because they need that tummy time to develop the tone and the curve. When the baby can lift their head, and you can put the baby on their tummy. Usually, as I say, within 2 to 3 months they should be able to lift their head. If they can't, don't put them on their tummy, because this is where that danger is, right? So we don't want to compromise the baby's breathing or anything if they can't move their head. Advantages, so you get more oxygen to your brain. They found this out, I think they've known always, if you look at premature babies, they always put them on their tummy, right, in the hospitals, because they know that when the baby is on their tummy, there's about 10% more oxygen to the brain than there is when they're on their back. They did this in COVID. There was a hospital in New York that put COVID patients on their tummy, and I think I was on the news as well. So this is not new science. Everybody knows this. This is there.
That was for the lungs rather than the brain.
But still, it's the oxygen, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. So when the baby, more oxygen to the brain, and also the cervical curve develops better, like we said. The tone in the spine increases, better head shape. You've got your nice round head shape, and we've got better development of the joint of the head here. Okay?
So the oxygen level, is that to everybody or just babies?
I think it's everybody. Well, there is a caveat to that.
Oh.
So with adults, we have wear and tear in our spine, right? So we do get that depending on trauma we have had, our lifestyle, our hobbies. So if you have wear and tear in your spine and you lay on your tummy, obviously there's going to be some irritation. You could wake up with a sore neck. So we don't want you to go straight onto your tummy.
But then we were talking earlier
Yeah.
today actually that we actually in our lives now we don't do much of this. We talk how important it is to have that tone in the neck, right? We actually start losing that curve because
Yeah, I was going to come in on that. It's a very left field question. As you get to mature years, you tend to turn with your torso, not with your head and neck.
Correct.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the,
And I do neck exercises twice a day for that very
Yeah.
reason. But bearing in mind what you said about the nerve clusters
Yeah.
in the muscles and also in the base at the top of the spine
Yeah.
there, does that have some neurology effect on your brain as well? Because you're not
Yes,
using your neck.
100%.
Yeah.
That's
So
why.
people get
That's why it's
forgetful
there.
and things
Yeah.
like that. And elder people, they don't use
No.
their necks at all.
No.
no, that's
They
exactly
forget,
what-
they just start turning like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Because we don't do that anymore much, or we
Well, I
don't
do
run
twice a
around
day.
but yes, but not many people do, right?
No,
We
they
have
don't. They
technology,
shouldn't.
we use computers and phones, and we start losing that
Text.
curve.
And also
we don't do that
smartphone
much.
necks.
Yeah.
Exactly. So over
Exactly.
time we lose that tone. We start having problems, and then we lose the curve, and then
You don't realise you stopped using your neck, do you? They
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your
And
body
if you
just
don't,
turning like that,
yeah.
they forget.
And as we said, movement is amazing for the joints, right? The joints are designed to move, and if
Yes.
you don't move them, and we get that in that, lose that curve and get it very stiff, then over time, what happens is we start losing that fluid and mobility in the neck.
That has a
and
feed-on
causes
effect to other problems, doesn't it?
degeneration, right? Exactly. And then you go into that cycle because of degeneration. You don't use it much. Luckily, you do exercise, but not many people do,
And although those exercises as well, and those as well.
But even for us, it would be quite important to, like.
And also your shoulder ones like that and involving your shoulders as well, which eases up those neck muscles as well.
Yeah. Anything you can do to your neck is always a good thing. Yeah.
Right, that's the neck curve. There we go.
If you want to go home tonight and start doing it.
But yeah, we should be having that good lordotic curve, that C-shaped curve there, and the only way we can achieve it is through obviously getting these muscles stronger, which pull your head up and cause that give
The
us
other one I
that
do is the one where you do that and you push against your neck 10
that we
times.
strengthen the
Yeah.
same muscles as well. Yes.
That's another one you can do, isn't it?
So have you had 2 times that, so you've got
Yes.
You can have too tight, but then there's a dysfunction. That's
Yeah.
not necessarily a functioning neck. So that would be other reasons for it. We would find out what that is if it's an adult, for example. But you can get babies like that actually. So you can. So if a baby is in like this sort of position, that is not necessarily good either. because that is a dysfunction, that's a weakness, but it's a hypertonic muscle that is weak, rather than a muscle that's hypotonic, which is like loose muscle, that's weak. So they're both weak, but they're just weak in a different way. Yeah.
So what would you do for that then?
So we would look at like why the baby's like that. So often is usually that type of thing happens in birth, after birth. So usually it's the way maybe the birth process was, how they may have used like vacuum delivery or anything like that. So we would work on those areas, and then when the baby loses that tension, say around the cranium, the baby just relaxes. So we don't.
Because they would have an equal tension in the.
Correct, in the lumbar spine as well. So this is the thing about the neck. The reason why neck is so important is because this now reflects what your curve is doing lower down. So if you don't have your neck curve, guess what? You don't have a curve down in your lumbar spine either.
There's a domino effect, isn't it?
Well, it's a reflex.
Yeah.
It's the way the brain works with the curves and the spinal tone. Whatever your cervical curve is doing is what your lumbar curve is doing.
So there's one leading up with the cervical.
This is your big one, yeah? That dictates the whole spine. So this is it. This is the one. Right. So how do we check if brain development is on track? So have you guys ever heard of a test called pull to sit test? Remember we just talked about babies should be able to lift their head by the age of 2 to 3 months. This is that test. So this is a test that you can do, and we do it as part of our exam on babies. Unfortunately, I don't have a doll to show you, but essentially you can look this up. It's on YouTube everywhere. But you basically are holding, the baby will hold on to your thumb, right? Because they have the grasp reflex. And once your fingers are on their forearm, and as you stimulate their forearm, they will start to lift. And as they lift, they bring their head up with it. And if they bring their head up with it, we're happy, they're doing what they're meant to do. If the head is lagging behind, that is the bit we don't want to happen. That now tells me this baby has got head lag. And they have now, we'll talk about it later, but they have connected this to developmental delay that we see in children later on. And it's an early test, you can do it at, as you see, 12 weeks of age. So this is when we ask all our babies to have that check. Like, you know, if I have a patient who I see through pregnancy and they say, oh, you know, I've had a great birth, baby's lovely, feeding well, everything's sleeping well, I'll say, right, okay, bring them in at 12 weeks. I want to make sure they can do this. So this will tell me, are they on track to develop their milestones? So milestones on track is another way we can check if the baby is developing their brain as they should be. They need to be able to roll to the front, to the back, and a back to the front. Usually about 4 to 6 months. It can be early, and we don't want them sitting before they can do that. Because a lot of parents think if a baby skips some of these milestones, oh, my baby's already walking at 6 months, there's something going wrong in that brain. It's not meant to. That's not meant to happen. You're meant to be able to roll first, which again will help you with your spinal tone. We want the baby to be sitting independently by 6 months, right? Again, I think this is a quite well-known sort of milestone. And this is mainly because of digestion. This is when we start introducing baby food, weaning. So we want them to be able to do that. A lot of the time what I see is some babies are supported with cushions and these, what are they called, bumbo chairs or something? Yeah, so ideally you don't want any of that. They should sit independently on their ischial spines, ischial bones. So basically where the sacrum is and the pelvis is, they should be able to sit on these bones independently, and they should be able to be stable, right? So if they, let's say for example, if they roll this way, they should be able to put their hand up and come back up. If they roll that way, that is a reflex in their brain. This is part of it. They should be able to do that. We want crawling. Crawling is they've now almost removed this milestone from the guidelines, which is why I've put, please note, UK guidelines are somewhat different. They don't really think crawling is as important as we think it is in the brain development. We want the babies that see us, we want them to crawl around 7 to 8 months, and we want them to crawl for a minimum of 3 months. This will help them to form the right and left brain connections. We know that those that don't crawl will have issues with balance and coordination later when they are like developing as children. So we want this crawling to be there for quite a while. We want them to be able to cruise furniture and then walk independently by 12 months. I think the guidelines in the UK now say as long as you've got a baby walking by 18 months or 2 years, it's okay. And they can crawl or bump shuffle is what I read. Bump shuffling should be happening. That means something didn't go right in your brain. So again, that's a sign that the brain is not developing as it should do. So another assessment we do is something called primitive reflex assessment. We do that throughout their first year. We want to make sure that the right reflexes are coming through. So they have to first emerge. These are survival reflexes. This is what our brain initially has. It has a primitive reflexes that help us come out of that birth canal and survive the first few months, right? And then as they, if you like, emerge, they will be active, helping us, and then they actually disappear. And they disappear usually with inhibition from the top here, so top down, if you like. So your brain, higher centers, they inhibit these reflexes, and we then integrate them into the postural reflexes. And postural reflex basically means you're going from a laying down position as a newborn to a standing position as a toddler, right? So that's what we want to happen. This should happen within 12 months. And when you see the delays in this stuff, this is when you start to see other things happening in the childhood.
Aren't there quite a few primitive?
There's loads. That's another whole lecture. I'm not going to go through that today. I mean, I can give you an example. There is so here, so stroking here is called a rooting reflex. So if the baby is stroked here, especially in the first 3 months, which is when it's supposed to be active, the baby should be able to turn the head and open their mouth, right? Now, we see babies, I'm stroking away, and there's no response. So that means that the reflex hasn't even emerged in that baby. I'll give you another reflex. So when the baby is at the last stage of birth, you have a reflex in your foot called the Babinski reflex. Now this reflex is there because it's supposed to help you. You push against the uterus and you propel yourself forward down the birth canal. And we all know how difficult birth is these days.
Yeah.
That reflex is, again, not happening for a lot of people. So it needs to emerge, it needs to be active, and then it needs to inhibit or process, if you like, in your brain.
How will you know it was inhibited?
So that's always a challenge. So if it's not there, it's like, did it come through or is it already inhibited? Well, we know the timings of them. So the first 3 months we want to be able to breastfeed the baby, right? So we want the reflex to be there. So if it's not there, I know it's not there. It didn't inhibit, it can't come and go already. I know the baby's like 2 weeks old, so.
Yeah.
So you can work out from the timings of it, that is it inhibited or is it actually didn't even come through.
Why would it not come through though?
Didn't get the right stimulation in utero.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, there's so many factors we don't know. It could be diet, it could be genetic, it could be so many things. Yeah.
Can you help with that later?
So this is the thing about the brain. Brain is like, we've got neuroplasticity, right? So if I notice a baby, so we had a baby last week, for example. So when I checked the suck reflex, like there was nothing going on. The baby was able to breastfeed, but not effectively. So we did the work around the mouth, and I think about 3rd or 4th session after cranial work and work around the mouth, we could feel the suck was different. There was a vacuum form, which is what's meant to be there right at the beginning. And the mum told us the baby used to feed like, I don't know, on and off for like half an hour, 45 minutes. And now the baby was feeding in 10, 15 minutes and, you know, like sleeping through longer hours. And so obviously that tells you there's more efficiency in how the baby's feeding. So that's how we help. Yeah.
Hemi, would you go as far as saying that the loss of a reflex, if it has, not that it hasn't come out yet, but it's just not developed, that's brain damage basically, isn't it?
I think there's a brain delay.
Brain delay.
Yeah, I think your brain is very clever. I think it will form alternative pathways to bypass that bit. But I think there's going to be some effect on your brain if it doesn't come through.
I'm thinking of the damaging factors, say, like smoking, for example.
Yeah, it could do. And we also know that primitive reflexes return in adults that have brain issues. So if you have, for example, Parkinson's, or if you have stroke, some of these reflexes will come back. They're not gone anywhere. They are in your system. All that's happened is, your brain is inhibiting them, so you're not seeing them. And we want that, right? Because our cortical centers are controlling our life right now, so we want them to be inhibited. We don't want to be able to have these reflexes active.
There's a little research we found. We talked about the pull-to-sit test and how it's actually it's found to have a link between failure of pull-to-sit skills, later social and language outcomes. Typical posture development, and persistent presence of head lag may be important early indicators of social and language vulnerability, including autism spectrum disorder. Very interesting.
Yeah, and that's 2023, not that long ago, but there's been lots of research. This is the most recent one we found. So as we were just saying, this is how the reflex, natural progression of it will emerge, it will develop, and it will integrate. And we want this to happen to every reflex that is meant to be there.
But your primitive reflexes are all always there. If you got shocked or traumatized or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
They would just emerge to
Yes.
help you in
that moment
of,
correct,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So there is a reflex called fear paralysis reflex,
Yeah.
right? So I don't want to trigger anything in anyone if I talk about this, because sometimes when you hear these things and you listen, it can trigger something in you, like a reaction in your nervous system. But fear paralysis reflex is when you kind of say, for example, I don't know, I'm going to use a gunman, right? A gunman comes, you play dead. That is your reflex being activated because that is your survival mechanism at that point in time. So, and there's lots of other examples you can see that reflex will be activated. But yes, that would be the case.
Okay. Yeah. So of course we talked about the some consequences, and with the research we just showed, we already talked about. Fifth one there, which is ASD, autism spectrum disorder, but also we've got ADHD or ADD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or just attention deficit disorder. Obviously, with the motor milestones, we will have problems. Tall walking, breastfeeding issues, we talked about that already. Clumsy children.
1 second, change the battery.
That's the reason. So it always goes back to this first year. What happens? Yeah.
Okay.
She actually take a granddaughter to a good choreographer.
Yes.
It's done a bit of business.
It's not my call. It's not my call.
We'll be talking a
I
little
can
bit about.
interfere without anyone noticing.
We'll be talking a little bit about how the brain develops as well. So obviously, right hemisphere and left hemisphere, and what they affect and what kind of areas right hemisphere controls and left hemisphere controls. But we also know, especially if they're not developing at their right pace, and especially if one side develops a little bit more or faster than the other side, that communication between two hemispheres can also cause. We've got a lot of research now suggesting that can cause problems like motor problems like Tourette's, or problems like ADHD, ASD, or OCD. This is quite interesting. And because we were talking about neurodiversity earlier.
What about,
Yes.
what about a baby that's born bum first?
Yes.
Monstrous?
Yeah, so we would.
What sort of things would you expect from that?
So usually, if the baby was breech, well, first of all, they don't even get to go through the birth canal, so nothing gets activated along their torso. They normally nowadays get given a C-section.
Well, I was Greek. I'm just asking for myself.
Yeah. So depending on, again, you know, like, so the good thing about when you were born was that there was no technology, none of this stuff. So you were, yeah. So you might have had a vaginal birth, which was probably good for you back then. And also back then, you know, you were probably left on the floor to move around, and right. Nowadays we have all these, you know, jumperoos and walkers, and you know, again, all of this is delaying our development. So again, I say to my parents, don't buy any of this stuff, save some money, put the baby on the floor, let them do whatever they want to do. Yes, you do have to comfort them. So, you know, when they say let the babies cry, well, yeah, you know, like I say, if the baby's crying, make sure they know you're there for them, right? They need to know. That is part of their development, because if they see no one's coming, that will affect them. And this is why I don't quite like that sleep training sometimes, because they tend to say, you know, leave that baby and don't go in. And I think that, you know, they stop crying not because they suddenly learnt how to sleep. They stop crying because they know no one's coming. And that is going to cause a big mental issue for them later.
Well, that ties in well with the slide we've got here.
Yeah.
Obviously, to get the best start in life, what can we do better to influence the brain development? And yeah, we talked about wanted and welcome by parents. Research shows that affects the brain development. Optimal bonding with skin to skin. Do you want to?
Yep. So basically, I'll just go back to that research about the orphans. So there's a study they did, and they put babies before the age of 2 with a loving family that wanted to foster them, and then they watched the brain develop over the next sort of until they were at age of 8, and then they had orphans that were not sort of adopted or fostered before the age of 2, and they were given a family after the age of 2, and then they watched their brains, and they found that the brains were different in these two groups of people. The brains of the babies that were adopted in the early years, like the first 2 years, they had no difference to a brain of someone who was born to the family and developed, you know. So we know that the orphans that didn't have that loving family, their brains developed differently. And they only did it up to 8 years, so I have that study somewhere if anybody wants it. So, exactly. And then we do want, like, that very first, as soon as the baby's born, it's important to have that skin to skin. This is important for bonding. We call it the golden hour after the birth. You know, the baby should not be taken away from you unless of medical emergency. I've put that in there. But if everything is okay, they should be left with you. You want the breastfeeding to be initiated. They've done research on this, that the babies that were on the breast within that first hour after birth had a much more successful breastfeeding journey than the babies that didn't get that. So again, we know the research supports this. Did you have playtime free of harnesses in your first year? Like we said, we want the babies to be free of any restrictions. Did you have tummy time? And nowadays, particularly again with COVID, we have a lot more research now that's telling us that their development of social engagement is based on our faces. So you remember everyone was wearing a mask? Yeah. Or there is an effect on these children now. Now they're in school age, we can see that there's an issue with the social. So the face-to-face time is important, you know. So you know, like you have sometimes, you know, and I know everybody's busy, mums can be busy, so they have a baby on the breast or a bottle, and then they, you know, this is going to affect that baby. Look at that baby, the baby's engaging with you. You want that eye-to-eye contact. You want them to, again, you know, and so we do say to our patients, we want you to have face-to-face time with baby, not just hold the baby, breastfeed, and do something else.
Textures of food we were
yep.
talking about today.
And of course, when you eat, when you're weaning the baby, we know that, again, you know, we're coming back to the reflexes again, the suck swallow reflex. We want the babies to be able to be weaning with different textures. So you have babies that become fussy eaters when so these are sometimes babies where they mush up the food and give it. Whereas if you can give a baby, like obviously make sure there is no choking hazard, but like I say, a green bean, you're not going to choke on a green bean. It's a thin thing, and you let the baby chew on that. The baby learns different textures. The baby will also learn hand to mouth, hand-eye coordination. All of this is helping that baby's brain to develop. So, yeah.
Baby led feeding.
Yeah.
Baby led weaning.
It's
horrendous.
yeah.
Porridge.
Yeah. This is it. But exactly. And then breastfeeding. We all know breastfeeding is good. There is now lots of support out there. If someone wants to breastfeed and they can't, there is support out there. There is lactation consultants. There's us. There's osteopaths that work with cranium. And if you can get to the right people, you can breastfeed your baby. I haven't met anyone who hasn't been able to, that has come to us. Yeah, sorry.
I'm intrigued. Everything you're talking about is first world stuff.
Yeah.
How does this compare to third world, where they don't have any of this information, they're just bringing their babies up naturally?
They probably do a lot of this naturally. Yeah. They probably do most of this.
That's what I'm like.
Yeah.
Has that research been done?
I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of it. Yeah. Yeah, but I think they probably do a lot of it. Yeah. They don't have issues with breastfeeding.
No one's done a research on it.
No.
Shouldn't it be done?
Should be, I guess.
We can. All this stuff.
Yeah.
But they were doing it for years before we had all this stuff.
Yeah, and we were probably doing it better, like in your day, than now, right? Nowadays is a lot different to what was back then.
Sometimes there's too much information overload.
Yeah, or too much development, technology. Yeah. Yeah.
Too much kids.
I don't think mothers get very much support in hospital with breastfeeding now, though.
Yeah.
They're in and out within a day.
Quite quick, yeah. Yeah.
And there's not much support there.
Yeah.
So unless you've got someone who's there to kind of help you.
Yeah.
There's also
don't know what you're doing.
a social thing with the breastfeeding as well.
Yeah.
So I've got 3 little ones, and the mums, they don't want to do it. I'm actually hoping I've got one in the oven at the moment. I keep talking to her about breastfeeding.
Yeah.
I talk to the others as well, but they just, as soon as they just didn't want anything to do with it.
See, that's what I'm getting.
Yeah.
It's not technology. They're on social media and they're reading what everybody else is.
Yeah, I know.
Whatever social media is
Yeah.
the
More
trend.
people were breastfeeding when we had our kids than they are now, which is sad.
My youngest daughter, she's still breastfeeding. She's 15 months now, actually. And she's going to continue doing it.
Good.
Yeah. I think because we've talked about it, so I don't think she would stop either. She would.
My daughter came
Yeah.
to Hemi because she had issues. Casey wouldn't take a bottle as well.
Yeah.
And you did something, and it was like a miracle. All of a sudden, okay.
So, of course, we also want you to make sure that did you feel secure? Were your parents there for you? Did you get sleep trained, like we said? And I'm not saying sleep training is never needed.Maybe in some cases it is, but there are probably ways to do it which is a bit more nicer to the baby and the child. So, yeah, more human.
I ended up with my son sleeping in the bedroom until he was 8.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't stand it. It was
Yeah.
awful.
So
I got
they've got research on co-sleeping. They say the brains of the kids that do co-sleep usually are more they feel more secure, they have less anxiety, less depression when they're teenagers. So they've got research on that. So co-sleeping is normal. Co-sleeping. So as in you sleep with your mum and dad in the same bed. Which I know will be
Which they do in the third world.
right? Exactly. And if you look at other sort of animal species, right, you don't see a lion and a lioness sleeping in one area and the little cub sleeping in a... It doesn't happen, right? When you think logically about these things, it's like, well, why do humans do it? We don't do it. No one else does it. Yeah. Yeah. There is a risk, but obviously if you make sure you take precautions, right? Yeah.
You don't dead sleep. You just don't. Not when you've got a new baby.
No, exactly. Mums are so aware, hyper aware. We're never gonna do that. Yeah.
Well, if you go back in history,
Yeah.
even in this country, they slept with their animals, their babies and everybody all under the same roof, didn't they?
Yes.
They're all in bed together.
Yeah.
All in one hut.
So infections and first world stuff and all this mumbo jumbo didn't apply.
No. Yeah.
Well, they did have a greater percentage of deaths, obviously. But
Yeah.
When we had our baby, we got 3 in a bed, a book called 3 in a bed.
Okay.
And I had to be celibate for 6 months.
Oh, there you go. That's the only disadvantage.
we're lucky it was only 6 months.
And these are, I'll let you do it.
Yeah. So a few activities obviously we can do on top of those. So talk, read, sing and play, stimulate the brain development, responsive relationships, loving, dependable adults, responding to child's cues, key to healthy brain development, exploration and interaction, that we need to use our senses obviously to develop them, and yeah, physically active, physical activity, keep them away from screens, ensuring babies reach their milestones, checking primitive reflexes emerge and make sure they become posture reflexes, and yeah, we can always get them checked with chiropractors, osteopath, or whoever is qualified for checking these cranial things, and that would be again quite key, because I mean you guys are doing this today and learning quite a bit, but many people just don't know. A little bit about
So the brain develops from right to left. Okay, so we know that the first 7 years are critical, but remember we also said that the cervical spine curve is critical. So one of the part of the brain that really needs to develop to influence that is the right side of the brain. So that is what develops first. And when this right brain development is not happening, like we said, we get the low tone in the neck. And this now, it shows that it's a precursor to scoliosis that happens in childhood, right? Infantile scoliosis. So they now know that there is a trigger to the scoliosis, and it's low tone of the cervical spine. So this is really important that we get that brain to develop as it should do. We've got various brain exercises we do with our babies to help that right brain develop. And of course, that tummy sleeping or tummy time is one of them. And it develops first, 0 to 3 years. And then the left brain starts to develop between 3 to 6 years. And you'll see in a minute, these are our left brain is our analytical brain. It's the brain where we use mostly in school, right? For analyzing and maths and so on. And the right brain is our creative brain. So this is the one, and it's explored with like creativity, art, and so on. And so this is what we want to do. We want to stimulate the brain that is meant to develop first, then go on to the left, and then from the age of 6 onwards, they both develop together. And then there is a part of our cortex called the prefrontal cortex. It starts its journey in the very first year of life, but it's not complete until you're 25 years of age. And this is the part that is involved, it's the most evolved part of our brain, and it's concerned with judgment and reasoning. And that's why, in a way, until you're 25, you really don't know how to make a decision. So.
Is there a difference then if you're born left-sided, which is the minority, as opposed to right-sided?
Oh, you mean like the...
Well, no. So some people are left-handed, but they're the...
Oh, yeah.
Most of the right-handed majority.
Yes.
Because you say the brain develops right to left.
Yes.
The left-handed people develop differently.
Kind of, but there is also a familial link with left-handedness and right-handedness. So.
Will it affect their brain development as it goes right to left and then left-handed?
As long as their right brain develops, no, it shouldn't affect it. Yeah, they need to still have their right brain develop, even if you're left-handed.
What dictates whether right or left-handed?
So that's what I mean. There is a familial link. There is, if you didn't have the correct things happen at the right time, sometimes that will lead you to be left-handed. But not all left-handed people have issues. Some have, it's a familial genetic thing, right? So and if you are left-handed, you should have a laterality, right? So when the brain is first developing, the first 2 years, you don't have what we call laterality, which means you can use right and left hand. After
There's no change between thinking process of your right.
no, but remember, this is when it's developing the most. So how you develop in those years will affect whether you choose the right or left. And then after the age of 3, you will choose like left hand more or whatever, right hand more.
Okay, you don't think differently because you're left-handed as opposed to right.
No, but like I say, there's some school of thought that left-handedness, we're meant to be right-handed. How the brain is set up is set up to be right-handed. Yeah.
But if you are
Yeah.
left-handed developing for a right-handed person,
Yeah.
does that affect the left-handed people?
So if you are a right-handed person developed as a left-handed person, I think if you can get to that baby or the toddler quick enough, you may be able to change it, but you can't change it after a certain time. Yeah.
Affect the left-handed people if your brain's developing for naturally for right-handed people.
I imagine there will be some mismatch, maybe some coordination issues. I don't know. I don't think they've done enough research on this one. Yeah. Yeah. And ambidextrous, like people who can do both hands. Again, it's
like the thinking process of the brain. It's designed for right-handed people.
Well, I think from what I've learned in my sort of training, that everyone has said that we are meant to be right-handed. Yeah. That is how the brain is developing. But there is a familial influence. There's genetic influence, so you can't clearly say that that's the case. So sometimes, yes, left-handed is normal for some people. Yeah. This is what we're saying. This is the brain, different parts of your brain. So right brain is your sort of freedom, passion, creative.
And then obviously the left side is the more analytic and science and really basic.
So this is the good news. So we know now that brain can have plastic change, which basically means it can change with stimulation. That's called neuroplasticity. We know that developmental delay, if it's identified early, it can be rectified. So if I see a baby with head lag, I know I can help that baby, and I know that head lag can disappear before the baby's 1. So we know how we can do that. Obviously, if I have a baby that I'm working on their head lag and it's not changing, I refer them to the pediatrician and get them checked out, and if there's anything else they can do. So we do want the children to be seen early as possible. There are lots of people that work with primitive reflexes. It's not just chiropractors, and not all chiropractors do, by the way, either. So you've got to find someone who is trained in it. Occupational therapists work with them. We do, osteopaths do, speech and language specialists, behavioural optometrists. There's so many specialists that are working with the development of the brain that if you can get to that right person, you can help that brain develop that bit better.
How do you actually get to that
right person? I think the OTs are part of NHS. I think sometimes, you can get private OTs. Are OTs part of NHS? Does anybody know?
The waiting list is so long.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, like we say, there is windows of opportunity. Like we've got those, you've got to be seen quicker. And yeah, if they're missed, of course, they will. You have to manage the consequences of that area not being correctly developed. And then next picture, we just like this. So again, it's that right brain, left brain picture. So obviously, that side is your left brain, and this side is your right brain. It's just really nice to show. Okay. Right. This is for us. Yeah, aging brain.
Why is the writing smaller on this?
It's a lot to write.
Also check your eyesight as well. Yeah. But again, we know movement is food for the brain. We want to keep moving. We need to keep training the brain through mobility as well. Of course, lack of movement, declining.
Exercise generally is good for the brain, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, 100%.
Endorphins, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the decline of axial tone. We talked about the neck and the tone of the paraspinal muscles. again, we talked about even as adults we need to be doing those stuff, and if we start to lose that, then that means decline in brain function and mental health issues, unfortunately. Also, lack of movement causes loss of muscle mass, which is sarcopenia. And yeah, with age, we start to lose the prefrontal cortex, cerebellum, and hippocampus. Grip strength is quite important for us, for the brain as well, and we lose that as we age. So it's important to train that. Of course, we have changes to the brain size, vasculature, and cognition, and curvature of the spine. So scoliosis, only those who have lost their cervical curve, because that means again loss in actual tone as well, which is supposed to keep your spine straight, right? The spinal muscles. Anything else you want to add?
That's it.
There's impacts of loss of muscle tone and strength. Don't want to read it through.
So sarcopenia, they say that but from the age of 40 we start to lose muscle. So, and it just accelerates as we get older. So ideally, before you get to the age of 40, build as much muscle as you can, because we are all going to lose it. So you've got to train it. Yes, you can keep muscle after the age of 40, but you've got to work on it. You've got to do your strength training. You've got to do your cardio training. We're not saying go to the gym, by the way. We're saying things like walk. Make sure you're training your grip strength in some way. So you need, like, I think you can get these squash balls and, you know, things you can just do when but movement is the key. If the more you're moving, the better you are. And
I saw someone today taking their kid to school on a bike, pedal bike, with a baby box on the back with a little cushion around it. I haven't seen that for years. My mother used to take them to school with a baby box on the back of the bike. Housewives don't do that anymore.
No.
They take big SUVs, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah, and walking is you know, simple, but if you can walk every day, you'll know. We know that will help your insulin resistance. So we know that you're less likely to get things like diabetes, particularly if you walk after a meal. That's when you use up the sugar you've just eaten. So you want to be walking after meals. Yeah. Yeah, we're not. So that's why I just put down diet earlier. We're not going because it's too big. Yeah. That'll be another talk on its own. Just the gut. Yeah. Right. Exactly. So yeah, we know that as you lose your muscle mass, the biggest risk elderly folk have is the reduced mobility and the risk of falls. Right, that's the biggest one. And there are things you can do to counteract this. So this is what we're going to talk about next. So what can we do to preserve our brain function? Movement, like we said, you know, it always was, is still the best thing for you. Exercise, we want to exercise your grip strength, your cardio. It can be walking 30 to 45 minutes, a little bit of a brisk walk. You will get your heart rate up, and that will start to exercise pretty much the whole body in one go. Maintain your cervical curve. Do exercises from a professional. We don't want you to just go onto YouTube and look up how do I exercise my neck. Make sure your sleep position is good. Now this is we've done it in red because, like we said, we don't want everyone to go home and start sleeping on their tummy. It is good for you if you can do it without pain, but obviously you've got to have, if you have tensions in your neck, you want them removed before you do this, because this can make worse. Yeah, your lower back. Yeah.
Is it okay if you always slept on your tummy just to carry on? Like
yeah, it's as long as you don't have the issues with your spine. That's the biggest thing. Yeah.
How much time should you spend in front of a screen each day?
Not much. Hopefully none at all. Yeah. Hopefully minimal as possible. It's not good for us. Soon as we do that, we start to curve our shoulders forward, head goes out. We start to lose here. Our curve, and we start to irritate. Remember that C4-5 area we said that has the highest number of receptors there? Guess what happens to that as we age? It starts to degenerate. So you start to get arthritis there. And when that happens, you lose your movement. And obviously you get aches and pains, that's on top, but
Do you think because of mobile phones, teenagers and young people will be worse?
Yeah, they'll keep us in a job for much longer than we're there.
Because Wi-Fi will be readily available on all the underground by 2025.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. Yeah, that's it.
I've got some glasses, especially for my computer, which have a tint which takes out the blue light, which is supposed to be helpful.
It is, but then you're still sitting. It's the sitting that does it as well, so movement.
You should get up and move around every hour at least.
Even, if not even quicker, yeah.
I was told that if you do 15 to 20 minutes exercise, then you double your heart rate.
Exercises, yeah.
I was 15 to 20, provided you double your heart rate.
Okay, so there's exercise, there's lots of different types. So you've got HIIT training as well, so again, a different topic, but we're just saying generally, like, because whenever I talk about exercise, sometimes patients say, oh, but you know, I can't go to the gym, or, you know, I'm 70 years old, what can I do? I was like, go for walks, you know, get yourself out there, go walking. Yeah, swimming is another one, yeah. Pilates is good, yeah, exactly. So move your body, right, however you do it. We want you to increase your proprioception, balance and coordination. Again, you can do that with exercise. We can give you proprioception exercises. Challenge your brain, learn something new. You know, go and learn piano if you want. You know, do something that is completely out there so your brain starts to form new connections. Ensure you have good posture. Ensure you work on your neck curve to restore it if it's gone, if you learn that it's gone. Of course, like we just said very briefly, real food, quality sleep, diet, exercise, mental well-being, and learn to manage your stress, because the stress is another factor that will affect us. So that's us. So
One final question. Genetic stem cell.
Okay, you mean genetically modified food?
No, genetic AI.
Okay, yeah.
And then we're using stem cells as well. We'll go into your field of research.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, I mean, you know, there's so much food now is GM food, so yeah.
They're flagging up, they think they might find the source of Parkinson's now through genetic AI stem cell research and things like that.
But wouldn't you want to know how to prevent Parkinson's in the first place if you could?
Well, if they find the source, presumably they will know how to prevent it.
Rather than trying to treat it once it happens?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Most of it can be preventable anyways.
Yeah.
They're trying to find solutions once it happens, right? But you can prevent.
Prevention is always the best option.
Yeah. Have a best start in life and look after yourself, and who knows, right?
Do you know about sleeping on your left or right side?
Sorry?
Do you know about sleeping on your left or your right side? I've always been advised if you're going to sleep on a side, it's always best to sleep on the left as opposed to the right.
That's for your stomach mainly.
Yeah, so your stomach is there, so...
And your heart pattern, where your heart is as well, so it's not having stress because it's lying on the same side. So
I think it's more the stomach thing.
Yeah.
So that's how I understand it, is digestion.
Stomach's shape allows the acid to them when you lie on that side to sit in that little gap instead of coming up to your...
And you don't get the heartburn.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know why. Thank you very much.
That's what we know. I don't know much about the heart.
It's to do with the stomach, so
yeah.
it's more than sleeping on the left side, basically.
Yeah. But if we're looking at optimal sleeping for the brain, it's not any sides.
I can't remember as a kid, we never talked about ADHD. We were just very few badly behaved. Just illegally done. But there were, perhaps out of school, about 600, I think perhaps less than 10, probably 5, badly behaved. But today it just seems every time we switch the TV on, it's, my child has ADHD.
Yes, yeah.
Is this all linked in, do you think?
That's what we think. We think that.
Factors. I think biggest factor is this. I think because of how we're not developing properly. But at the same time, maybe there's a small factor that we can't really ignore, is that we didn't know much about neurodiversity before. We're learning more and more and more every day, right? So I think we name stuff now, and
I mean, that can be boring. The first time I had McDonald's as a treat in the 20s. Now it's just every day.
Yeah, I mean the food is a big thing. Yeah.
I think processed food is.
Yeah.
I mean, I do work in the school, and I would say before we might have 1 or 2 children in the school with ADHD, autism. Now every year there's probably 2 children in class. So it's definitely gone up in the time I've been teaching.
Is that because they're more aware of diagnosing it?
No, I've worked in schools for 40.
I think our life has changed. Our life now is very different to what it was 30 years ago or 20 years ago.
It's very scary actually how quickly it has gone, because there's not support available for these children now. So that was really interesting what you said. I've not heard that before about the line in the back, but that does link in. That's been going for about
20 years.
Something years
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel frustrated when you walk down the street and there's some mother on a mobile?
Yes.
And she's got a baby, that's probably 18 months old, blurred into the screen.
The baby's not got one in the pram these days as well.
Yeah. And sometimes...
Shut them up.
Sometimes, like when we, sometimes we have patients that say, oh, you know, my daughter's, you know, baby bum shuffles, and I try to say, you know, okay, you know, this is not normal, we don't want this to be, but then we're arguing back and forth because they see the guidelines which say your baby can crawl or bum shuffle, and I'm telling them not. And even I don't know if you saw, there's an ad from is it Huggies, or they've actually got the baby bum shuffling, and they're trying to make these things appear normal when they're not normal. So obviously people get mixed messages. Yeah.
Is that they've got a free hand.
Yeah.
Their mobile phone or their
whatever. No. It could be that their upper limb and lower limb are not
coordinating.
That could be why, but mobile phone could be another reason. Yeah. Yeah.
The smartphone would be the first one, not your mum or dad, but the smartphone.
Yeah.
What's your advice about dummies?
Oh yes, please.
So it's an interesting one. So if the baby is able to breastfeed, I would say you don't need dummies, because the babies will breastfeed for comfort as well. It's not always for food. So breastfeed on demand, right? Not every 2 hours on a schedule. When it comes to babies that are, or the mother has chosen not to breastfeed, then I would say sometimes the babies need that suck. Remember, it's part of that reflex. That reflex has to integrate. If they don't get it integrated, these are your babies that grow up sucking thumbs. Like, we know a 24-year-old in our family that still sucks thumb. 24 years old. And that reflex is never integrated in that person, right? These are also... part of it's become a habit now, so it's hard, right? You've got attachment to that habit. A young 2-3-year-old we can help, but 20-30-year-old, you know, they've got to want to change it. So it's an innate mechanism. They will do it because they know they need to suck. They need to suck in order to move the cranial bones, right? And there is something not quite right, and they just know. It's an innate thing. Yeah, probably she'll have stuff in her cranium that's not quite right. Yeah.
So would you advise that mothers with new babies, fathers with new babies, going to a chiropractor just to get everything checked out?
Yeah, I mean,
they don't think there's a problem.
100%. There is a chiropractor in near Melbourne. What's it called? I forget the place where he is, and he's I don't know how he's done this, but he's kind of got in with lots of the pediatricians, and everybody knows him, and every single baby that's born in that town, I think it's just outside of Melbourne, he checks. It's about 2,000 babies a year he checks. Yeah, it's a good thing. He doesn't have to do things on everyone, but he has to check all of them. Yeah. But if that happened, I think, yeah, we would need more chiropractors. But right, no.
No one ever tells them when they go to the baby classes and stuff like that.
No, definitely. Yeah.
Until I came tonight, I didn't know chiropractors even went anywhere near a baby.
I know, right? I think, like I said, most people know us for back pain and neck pain, but there's a lot more to us than what we do. Okay? Huh?
Midwife.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Yeah. There's less midwives now. They used to have yeah, no.
So they don't do the
tongue tie release, yeah, no.
You have to go for a special operation.
Yeah. And that's the occurrence, I mean, that's another lecture, but tongue tie is increasing as well, which again, wasn't heard of many years ago. So tongue tie is a tissue where your tongue is so it's kind of attaches to the floor of your mouth, and so therefore the tongue can't move. If the tongue can't move, the baby can't eat. There is no sort of like, they can't create that movement with their tongue to be able to eat, whether it's bottle or whatever. Yeah.
So why would we have more tongue ties now?
I think they're saying it's coming down to food, our diets, or the mum's diet. You know what someone said, mum's diet earlier. There's something to do with sort of like there's a. Okay, right. So this is a bit of a controversial research, but folic acid. Everyone heard of folic acid, right? Okay, so folic acid is the man-made synthetic version of folate. Folate is naturally occurring in green leafy vegetables. So what's happening now, as soon as you get pregnant, everybody goes on to folic acid. Now, folic acid is, like we said, synthetic. Now, what the research I read, what it says is that the folic acid attaches to the receptors where the folate is meant to go, right, for the neural development. Remember what folate is helping? Brain development. Back to here again. So where that folic acid attaches, it stops the actual folate that the mother might be eating to getting there. And this is now causing, and again, the tongue is part of neural tube, right? It's going to come out of the brain. So this is where it's going wrong. So they think so if we stopped taking folic acid and we took folate instead, or ate folate instead, would there be less tongue ties and less midline defects? Most probably, but no one's doing this research because the supplement companies or whatever, they're making a lot of money from folic acid supplements, so why would they do it?
What's your take on vegetarian and vegan diets affecting the child and the mother, I suppose, or the unborn child?
I mean, I'm vegetarian. I have 2 children. I don't, again, I do have to watch what I eat. I eat less processed food, more natural, real food, all that stuff. But would it be better if I ate certain things that have good nutrients, like say fish? Probably, but I don't. So I take my omegas in a supplement because I'm not going to eat fish. So yeah, there is certain things that you'll need. Obviously, there is now this whole thing about cavemen diets and not eating paleo and not eating carbs, and again, it's whole another thing. But I think my ancestries, I've grown up vegetarian. My grandmother and my great grandmother, everybody was vegetarian. They lived a good, happy life till my great grandmother lived to 103. So I'm thinking it must be okay for her. It must be okay for my genes. Yeah.
I've always been led to believe, but I don't know how true it is, that your body's not designed to eat meat. That's why, because you eat a steak, it puts a huge strain on the digestive system to digest it.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
And that could be other things about cancer and stuff like that as well. I don't know how true that is. I've always been led to believe
I don't think that's true at all. When you
I don't know.
Listen, you said design, but we've evolved.
Yeah.
So when we were first hunting and gathering, meat was a major part. Millions of years, whatever. So you can't say we weren't designed to eat meat.
I'm talking about current day.
Yeah, but we're still the result of evolution.
I don't know. I'm asking a question.
I'm trying to give you my take on that. I don't know what you would think.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yes, hunter-gatherers, we did eat meat, and then grains only came, 2,000-3,000 years ago? Grains weren't around for a long time. So we did just used to eat whatever, fruit from the tree and the meat that we saw. But I think, and then different parts of the world develop depending on so if you have a seaside town, they're going to have a lot more, like Japan, for example, fish is big there, right? And then you've got India, we have a lot of agriculture in India, so we're going to have more grain diet. And now it's just crazy, how they do farming, and I mean, we're not going to go into all that, but yeah. There's a lot of issues with our food.
True story that came from the States, actually, that a lady took her baby to the doctors in the pushchair.
Yeah.
And the doctor was quite curious as to what the baby was drinking.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, that's it. And it was Coca-Cola.
Oh dear.
And it brought up on, so maybe in 100,000 years we might be involved
to drink Coca-Cola.
Actually, when I had a food infection when I came back from Sri Lanka,
Yeah.
my GP came around me because I couldn't eat anything, nothing would stay in.
Right, yeah.
He came around and said, drink warm flat Coke.
Okay.
So that's the only thing that will set your stomach and stay in stomach. It did. Not cold, not fizzy.
Yes.
Just warm flat Coke. So I
Okay.
got to leave it to get warm. He said, and then just drink that.
Right.
And I drank that for a week.
You never know, right? Yeah. A lot of.
GP that told me to do that.
Yeah.
Well, you
Yeah.
can't trust
There's one sitting here at a time.
Can I just ask about, because there's so many more cesareans now than
Yes.
there used to be as well.
Yeah.
Is that making a difference too? Because obviously when a baby's born naturally, it's been everything.
Yeah, squashed.
Through,
Yeah.
And the cesareans, they just come in and they're not going through that.
That's exactly it, yeah.
It's worse for the baby being born by cesarean is, yeah.
I think if you look at neurologically, yes. Is it going to affect that baby's life? Probably no. Right? So I'm not saying these are life-threatening things, but neurologically, yes, because your skull is designed to overlap, right? So in that birth canal, this needs to happen, and it never did. So it's going to affect those primitive reflexes we just talked about. They never got activated through some of the birth stuff.
Sorry. There's a series of programs on the Radio 4 at the moment, Radio 4, called Child Before Prostate.
No.
The last one I listened to, the cesarean births they're doing now, they're experimenting with just making a slit.
Yes. Oh, I know this. So this is called a gentle C-section. Yeah. So the baby actually, yeah.
Squeezes itself out, so it's actually.
Yeah. There's a YouTube video about it as well. There's a YouTube video on one of the surgeons did this. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. If there's.
Baby to just.
Yeah. Let the baby come out.
Yeah. So they like come out, so they do all that.
There is some, and then you can also do the pressures manually afterwards, so you can get that feeling of. So if a cesarean baby is brought to me, yeah, I would have to examine, and then I would work on whatever I felt like needed to be worked on. It's not always the pressure. There are I don't know if you guys have come across it, there are some people who do something called rebirthing. Have you heard of rebirthing? Yeah. So they actually, so I had a friend many years ago now, probably about 10, 12 years ago, and her baby was born through C-section, and so they had this, in fact it was a doula and an independent midwife who came to the house. They set up everything like as if she was going to give birth again, and they pushed the baby through on top of the body obviously, but with the right pressures, and almost like they call it rebirthing, but they did that in the pool. That is out there, so I don't do that. I just do my neuro stuff, and that's it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if someone says to me, can I go and do it? I said, yeah, go. If it helps, go and do it.
You're talking there with quite a young baby.
Yeah. Literally was a few days. You can do it with an adult. Yes, you can. Yeah. There's a lot out there. Yeah.
Any age you can do it with an adult?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But they do say that, I've seen a couple of programs on this, that when the baby is not born so-called naturally, it's not cesarean section, then it's just when the baby comes through the birth channel that it gets all the bacteria.
Yes. Vaginal seeding. Yeah.
Therefore, a lot of allergies.
Correct. Yeah. Skin conditions.
Skin conditions and all sorts of things. So that's why. If you have to have a cesarean section, you have to
if it's medically needed, there's not much you can do about this. Yeah.
Rescue the child and the mother, but
yeah.
That is one of the. So the baby loses that if it's not born.
Yeah.
Through like a vaginal.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if you have a baby that's born through a cesarean section, but then you do all the other things right, You can counteract so many things that didn't quite happen, but you know what? You let the baby move, you did the tummy time, you did the... So you can counteract a lot of things. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Thank you. Thank you.